Let's take a breath together. Thank you, love eternal. So this is July. I don't know how it happened because it seemed like it was January a minute ago. They tell me that time moves exponentially faster the older you get, and I want to know who started that rumor because I'm pretty sure it's their fault it happens. Tomorrow is indeed the day that the United States celebrates its independence from Britain. In this morning's talk, Me, Myself, and I might best be subtitled Spiritual Independence, which is going to be very different than national independence. Because spiritually, there's nothing to become independent from. There's no mother nation to depart from. There's no Britain, there's no America, there's simply the divine. There's simply energy. And this whole idea of me, myself, and I is a conundrum because it proposes three, right? And I want you to try to wrap yourself around oneness and wholeness in a different way this morning. That me is actually that thing I was talking about during the announcement, the physical expression of divinity. It's not separate. It's not separate. I am a physical manifestation, a physical emanation of this one divine spirit. It's surrounding me, it's in me, it's as me. No separation. Now that gets a little challenging for our human brain to wrap itself around because we live in a world where everything is experienced as separation. Everything. And that is, for me, that's the whole reason to have a constant spiritual practice, to continuously remind myself that I am never separate. And when I say constant spiritual practice, sometimes I take it to the ridiculous level just to remind myself. Like at breakfast, this is God eating God at God time, with God as a fork, on God as a plate. Because that's what's accurate. If it's all God all the time, then it really can't be anything else. We're standing in God as a building, sitting in God as chairs, talking through God as a microphone. It's all God. And perhaps if we would understand that as the self, that the self isn't a separate Rev Rafe self, but the self, the true self, is the divine. That's who we really are. And so me, the physical, myself, the spiritual, and I, the I am, are all one and the same. Then we can begin to understand our own triune nature. Right? It's easy to wrap my head around the triune nature when I think about God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost, because I was taught those are three separate things. In the land of the Pentecostal, there are three separate things, right? And God the Father created and then essentially abandoned its creation. right? It's a male. It has residence in a place called heaven. We have residence in a place called earth. And then there's this whole hidden agenda of things I had to do if I want to attain residence with it in heaven. And the challenge is that the whole list of things that we have to do is made up by humanity. And so I don't know if you've noticed, those of us that were raised in religion, but the list keeps changing, right? It changes at the whim of the one making it up. Here's what I know by resonance. This is what I know by resonance. There is no thing to qualify for, and there is no way to be disqualified. Creation cannot abandon itself. If it did, it would all cease to be. Scientifically, we know this, right? And it's one of the things I love about science of mind is that it brings together science and spirituality. And so scientifically, life is simply energy. Scientifically, energy is the potential to create. Right? So we are physical forms of the potential to create. In science of mind, we are spiritual emanations fully empowered with what? The power to create. We don't have a separate mechanism of creation because we are the divine in form. We are creative at the level of its agency. We're not creating on its behalf. That assumes two. We are creating as it. I understand the term co-creation, and I'm challenged with it oftentimes because it suggests two. Right? So let's just own language is a barrier. Language is a barrier. That's why Rumi nailed it. Silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. All else is poor translation. It's just like in Judaism, right? There's no name for the divine. Because the minute we name it, we limit it. Right? The minute we speak about something, we limit it. The story of Buddha under the Bodhi tree, the moment of enlightenment, and then the moment of awareness of enlightenment, less enlightenment. Because that's how it works. And so anybody who assumes they have all the right answers for anybody else, I hope that scares you. I hope that scares you, because none of us have it. There is no the right answer. And we are not infused with divine intelligence. We are divine intelligence. See, we've got to take ourselves back. We have to stop this one-off process, right? If we're really going to get it. We are the presence of the infinite. We are the power of the infinite. We are. And we have to stop thinking about it like it's outside of us. And we have to recognize that it's also outside of us. Your brain hurt yet? Because that's what happens. Our brain, our human hard drive, argues with that. Because it is conditioned, and rightly so, to navigate the physical realm in separation. If it didn't, we wouldn't know which house to go to when we went home. Right? We'd walk out in the parking lot and we wouldn't know which car to get into. We need the human perspective. And it behooves us to understand that it's a machine. It's a mechanism. It's a tool. It's not the truth of who you are. It's an aspect of how you are expressing. It was interesting. I haven't been on Facebook much because I've been finishing up this move and I just have not had time. But I posted something a couple days ago that nothing I have ever said or done has changed another human being. And that's true. And I was amused at how many people wanted to argue with me. Right? But here's the thing. We change our own mind. Now, what a lot of people were actually arguing with was their own perception that somehow that statement said, we don't influence one another. That's not what I said. What I said was nothing I have ever said and done has ever changed someone else's perception, has never changed someone else's belief. That is done solely by their choice. And that will always be true. And I disagree, agree, doesn't matter, because it's like sometimes I have these internal arguments with myself that, you can keep saying it, Rafe, but you can't make it be true. You can keep saying it, but it's still not true. Right? You are the only thinker in your mind. The one thing on this whole spiritual independence, the one defining thing of your spiritual independence is your power of choice. Only you have it. Creation creates and then gives its creation carte blanche. Complete and total empowerment of choice to remember, to create. And it doesn't, creation doesn't have a guilt and shame paradigm. Creation doesn't have a spectrum where you're almost there, but not quite. Its only desire is to create and grace. See, choice comes with grace because you can't choose wrong spiritually. We can definitely misuse that choice in the human realm. We absolutely can. And here's the good news and the bad news. You can't not choose. There is no place where there is no choice in a creative being. Every thought is creative. Every desire is creative. It is your greatest independence. I've spent lots of time looking at all of the politics and all of the history and all of the wars and all of the legislation. And what I find at the core of all of it is a fear of choice. We want to legislate people's choices because we're terrified in this human realm that if everyone woke up to the power of their choice, that it would create anarchy. Now, would it create anarchy? I don't know. Would it completely decimate our power structure? Oh, yes, it would. And if we interpret that as anarchy, if we interpret the lack of power and control over other people as anarchy, then okay, it'll be anarchy. But when we understand our individual spiritual independence of choice, Now you're standing in your power. And I assure you, when you understand that you are the divine in form, you will choose differently. See, I don't worry about people making bad choices when they're in alignment with the spiritual truth of their being, because you won't do that. It is when we're in the realm of separation that we make poor choices, because we're operating from separation that says, I can lose something, so I have to choose to hold on to something. Those choices don't even come to mind when we know the truth of our being. When I look at each of you in the spiritual truth, I don't have to possess anything over you, because I am you. Everything I am, you are. There is no more or less. There's no big, little. There's no power structure, because there's oneness. And that choice is so incredibly powerful. I will never agree with anyone that anything I've ever done has changed them, because to do so will diminish you. And why would I do that? Why would I collude with even the most limited idea of separation in you? Why would I do that? I love you. You are powerful. You are the divine in form. Choose to know that. Choose that. And then let the infinite possibility fly. Because that's what we get to choose. Because the one thing, the infinite is the infinite. How do you make more infinite? Right? Maybe there's a way to do it in this human realm. I can't come to it. But what it can expand is its experience of itself. The only way it can do that is to give its creation choice. Otherwise, it just replicates itself. This whole idea that we get stuck, that's a lie. You've never been stuck in your life. You just keep replicating the same experience you don't want. There's a lot of movement in this thing called stuckness. It's not stuck, it's replication. The divine wants to expand. That's the whole point of creation. Be a part of it. Wrap yourself around the power of choice. And I want to wrap up with this. Everything is a choice. Everything. Right? You may dislike the options. That doesn't remove your power of choice. Right? And being infinite possibility in form, perhaps if we kick ourselves free of disliking the options, we might even come up with the option that we want that we don't see. If you're waiting to see it to believe it, it ain't coming. It'll show up when you believe it. Doesn't work that way. I'll believe it when I see it. No, you won't, because you're never going to see it. Right? The narrative you tell yourself drives your experience. I just spent 24 hours, 2 12-hour days, clearing about 200 yards of fence line of blackberries. 4 years worth of growth. Because I was operating from a misunderstanding. Now, I could have been mad at myself. I could have been mad at the other person. I could have been mad at the blackberries. My arms looked like I went 10 rounds with a bobcat on meth. I could be mad about that. Right? Or I can choose to love myself for not getting clarity. I can choose to love the other person for giving me clarity. I can choose to love my 62-year-old body that found its way back to 22-year-old energy for 2 days. Because it did. Like if you have one of these smartwatches, I am now a 2-day member of the 30,000 Step Club. And I survived it. And I actually had moments of fun in it. All of that is a choice. I could have chosen to say, nope, I'm not doing it. Hire somebody and send me the bill. That was a choice. But the minute I tell myself, I don't have a choice, well, guess what? I don't. Because I've advocated my ability to choose. And what I've really done is said, I consent to immerse myself in victim consciousness. Now, where are my villains? And we go hunting our villains, and then we're into guilt, shame, and blame, and then the decisions I make are skewed because I'm out of alignment with principle. When we act in alignment with principle, we choose principle. So maybe we can all quit worrying about the power of choice. But it requires us to give up control. And so ask yourself, am I more invested in walking in spiritual alignment or in human control? Because I think that's the only choice that's left to us as humanity. What will you choose? Let's take this into prayer. There is one infinite presence, one infinite power, one infinite intelligence, one infinite. It is neither gender, it is all gender. It is neither race, it is all races. One. Fulfilling its desire to expand itself as its creation. One. Being created. I know that I must be that. And I know that what is true of me in this truth of oneness must be true of all. And being created out of it, by it, to be it, each expression of it must contain the full power, presence, and intelligence of it. Each is that in form. Free to choose the desire of its heart, the divine within, calling forth newness to create. And so I speak my word, claiming and affirming that we are, as humanity, returning to an awareness of who we have always been, the infinite in form. That as we look at one another, we recognize that the divine is looking through the eyes of the divine, into the eyes of the divine. Never separate. That we live step by step, breath by breath, in an active, conscious, intentional awareness of oneness, of wholeness. That we practice grace with one another. That we empower choice in every creation. That we empower clarity. That we empower oneness by being it. That we lean into the spiritual independence as our birthright, to choose more God, to choose more love, to choose to live, breathe, and have our being in alignment with the truth of ourself, the I am. So grateful. So grateful for the peace that this simple recognition brings. The peace of the I am. And so it is in this gratitude that I release, knowing there is no thing for my humanness to do other than look for the evidence of the completion of the word spoken and say yes. So I invite you, if you are ready to say yes, to lean into, by intention, to make these words your own, that you join me as we say together, and so it is. Let's take a breath.